Hello, and welcome to another episode of Catch Up with the Catchpoles, where we talk all things business, life, mindset, and answer your questions that you have for us. So, this week we were asked to talk about toxic positivity. So, we're just going to talk about kind of emotions, positivity in general, and toxic positivity in particular.
So we thought it was a really interesting question,
Yeah,
and we'd never really heard of toxic positivity. And actually, when we were talking about it in the car yesterday, we were like, "Oh, what does that even
yeah, and we're
mean?"
like, oh, not too sure about the word toxic, not too keen on that, but
We were like,
then,
"Can you be too positive? Like is positive? Can it be toxic?" And then obviously we talked about it more, and we've kind of looked up and stuff like that. And actually, it can be toxic if you are dismissing things that you need to delve into or explore, like if you've experienced loss and actually need to, or just any really negative emotional experience and actually needing to work through those emotions, as opposed to kind of burying them and thinking it's fine, positive outlook.
yes, it's just not being positive for the sake of being positive. So we need positivity in our life, but you don't want to be so positive that you don't actually address the negativity that comes in your life, because you can't have the positivity without the negativity. And being having a toxic positivity is basically, like Natasha said, just not really addressing them and not saying they're a real thing. You're just like, no, we have to keep being positive, like just positive vibes, that sort of aspect, when that's all well and good, but you need to actually address that
Yeah, so you've got like that
negativity in your life.
emotion side, which we need to be addressing, and actually not kind of pushing under the carpet, but also things that might be happening in your life,
Yeah.
like you having problems, like just like financially. If you're kind of burying your head in the sand, then and you're kind of got that positive outlook, like everything will be fine, we will be fine,
Yes.
but you take no action to help the problems, then ultimately it's not going to get any better, and you potentially might end up in a worse
For
situation.
sure. So for us in our business, we could have had this very easily. So at the start, we felt we had to be super positive, create this positive environment around ourselves to push on, because we were doing something completely out of our comfort zone. But as we pushed outside our comfort zone, challenges came up and like issues and failures come up. And if we just kind of carried on being positive for the sake of it, actually looking at those failures and those challenges, they would make them even worse, because you wouldn't really be delving with the problem at hand. And we were talking to some friends about this yesterday, about how we've had to step back to go, okay, what hasn't worked for us and what's been going on, and what's this negativity that's been going on for us, so we could address it and make sure we improved it going forward. Whereas if you're just positive for the sake of being positive, that toxic I can't say the word.
Toxic. Toxic, just
Yeah, that
toxic,
toxic trait,
toxic,
toxicity. I don't know if that's the
toxic.
word I was
We'll
trying to
go with
say. That
it.
toxic trait can be actually negative for you, because you're not really looking at the problem at hand, and you've just opened up a bigger can of worms that you need to delve with further down the line.
And I think as well, it can be really toxic for other people.
Yes.
So we were just talking about before we came on here that actually with our own emotions, we're really happy often to stick and ruminate in them
Yeah.
and be kind of victim and poor me. And actually, we quite some of us, or most of us, kind of get stuck in that.
Yeah.
And then when we see somebody else experiencing often like negative emotions, it makes us feel uncomfortable, and therefore often we try to get them out of it, as like for our own, to make us feel more comfortable as quickly as we can. And
Yeah.
that's when
Yeah.
we say things like, there's plenty more fish in the sea, and it's okay, think of all the positives, and you'll be fine. And
From my perspective, being a man, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on about men's mental health
mm,
at the moment. But there's a lot of people will be like, just man up, don't worry about it, and that is a toxic positivity, because you're just trying to push someone out of it. You're trying to get them out of that state they actually need to talk about, and get people to understand and get it off their chest. Whereas if, like Natasha said, you're just kind of brushing it off, it's not actually dealing with the issue, and that's where it gets worse for people.
yeah, and be able to, it's okay to have negative emotions.
It is for sure.
And we try and teach that with our son, as
Yeah.
in, it's okay to be sad, like that's fine.
Yeah, like we don't like it when people go, which we have to really learn ourselves. When obviously, like, he gets upset, and sometimes people are like, big boys don't cry, and that's not the trait we want to have. Of That's quite, they're trying to be positive to get him out of that state, but he needs to understand that he can be in that state, and it's okay to be in that state, because it's all part of that learning curve, that you need to get your emotions out and deal with them.
But obviously, we're not saying do not be positive,
No, for sure,
because
the positivity helps
positive
you through
helps.
those challenges as
But I
well.
think, like with anything, too much of something can actually
Yeah,
be negative
it
or
really
can
can.
hinder you. Just like positivity, too much
Yeah,
negativity can also hinder you.
yeah.
So yeah, it's just been really interesting kind of topic
It has,
to
and it's
talk
kind of
about
putting
ourselves.
ourselves in that, kind of thinking about where it has impacted us. So, for example, this week is we actually lost someone really who had a profound impact on us the last few years, and that toxic positivity. If I didn't actually address it and just go, "It's okay, life carries on, it's okay," just don't worry about that, don't deal with that, that's going to come back, and you just burying your emotions is not going to be healthy for you. Whereas flipping it, and rather looking at it as positivity, by being positive, you actually can focus on it in a different way by looking at like gratitude and being grateful for them being in your life. Is not saying you shouldn't be sad and you shouldn't deal with that, because I needed to go into that, and I had a few days where I literally just, it kind of just made my heart sink, and I just couldn't really kind of get away from it. It just kind of took over me. But by being positive, it allows you to kind of then step back out of it and kind of move on from it. But not that we have fully got on over that at all at this stage, but it just allows you to just kind of look at things from a different perspective as
Yeah,
such.
and I think if you're very much like very driven by being positive, obviously that is a lot of hard work to be positive all the time,
Yeah,
because our brains are naturally kind of geared to kind of find the negatives
yeah, yeah.
just in order to protect ourselves. So to be positive all the time is really hard.
Being
And
around someone who's positive all the time can be really hard as well, because when you are struggling, that can be a toxic trait to be around, because you just don't want that person around you, because you're like, I've got challenges I'm dealing with.
yeah,
Please leave me alone.
and I think it's about if you are that positive person, which is great. There's nothing wrong with being positive. That's actually a good thing. But it's not having the guilt if you do find yourself in a negative space. That's also fine. So it's once again, it's just finding that right
Yeah, it's
balance.
understanding your emotions. I've seen a graph before. I can't remember if it's in the book called The Slight Edge. I'll put the graph up in a moment when I find it. It's about just understand that obviously you can have highs, you can have lows. You just don't want those highs to be too high, so being positive too much for the sake of it. You don't want to be too negative for the sake of it. You basically want to have that window to be a lot shorter, and you just bounce between those 2 points. So you kind of will be a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up, and those kind of rides, like the roller coaster, is going to come. But you just don't want to be like up and down so high that and so low that it just really has a
Yeah,
toll
where the
on you.
highs are super high
Yeah,
and the
super high, low,
lows, but then
super
are
low. That
super
it just
low.
kind of takes you in and out completely of life. That's where you want to just really, you start taking some time to understand yourself and your emotions, and how the way you say things impact you and stuff like that along the way.
So yeah, so we'd be really
Yeah,
interested
so
to
thank you
hear
for the
like
question as well.
what your thoughts are on toxic
Yeah.
positivity. Like, have you had that in your own life or with people that you know? But yeah, I'd be really interested to if you
Yeah, have
can
you got any
comment
sayings
or
that you've heard where people have said things to you where you're like, that's actually sounds like toxic positivity? Yeah, be super interested to get your feedback on
yeah.
this.
And thank you, Richard, for the
Yeah, thank
question.
you so much. Really appreciate that. And as always, we will catch you all again soon. But thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful week.
Take
Take
care.
care. Bye.